Well, good morning to you, or good evening wherever you're watching. A warm welcome back to another week on my allotment. And as always, when you have a garden or an allotment, they are dominated by one thing, and that is the weather. And this week it broke, and boy did it break. We've had torrential rain, high winds. You'll see a bit more of this in a minute. The storm ropes are up. I think it's fair to say every summer we get at least one really good summer storm which damages everything, because everything's in full leaf, fully weighed down with produce, and then we get some strong winds that come across this field and smash the allotments. And that happened yesterday. We were away at my mum and dad's, had a lovely day with them, so I wasn't here. So I came up Friday, worked all day in the torrential rain, and before I left I put this rope over just to belt and braces for this plastic roof, which I'm always worried about in high winds. So yeah, there is a bit of damage on the plot, and I am now concerned about the tomatoes particularly. I've got a very good looking crop of tomatoes out there, but they're way behind other years. Don't really know the reason for that. May have been the wet, cold spring. And they're just on the cusp of starting to ripen, and now we've got this really cold, almost, well, it is autumn-like weather. So on the plot today, as the sun comes up on another Sunday morning, I'm going to take a good look around at what I can harvest and get out the ground, particularly the onions. A lot of them are bolted, but they can still be used. I'm going to spend a lot of time in the shed, fire's on. It's blimmin' freezing up here this morning. And then just pick more produce, more fruit. If the trouble is with the raspberries, in severe rain they tend to go mushy, but there's a good crop of blueberries to be picked. Cheryl's coming up to pick more blackcurrants. We'll see how the day unfolds. Well, we wanted rain, and as the saying goes, be careful what you wish for. We've got it. This is about the 5th day of rain in a row. I am genuinely now worried about losing some of the potatoes and tomatoes to blight. But one good thing is the water butts are filling up beautifully. These were empty, and I was almost out of rainwater for the blueberries. Well, I was almost out of rainwater for everything. But one has filled up and the other is in the process of it. So there is a good side to this. And of course I haven't had to water all week. Took out this bed of strawberry plants, except for those I've identified for replenishing stocks. And there's only a couple of them. So dug them all out yesterday, raked it over, and I'm now going to improve this bed. I haven't been up the allotment when it's been raining hard. I've been working, which has been a joy. But now I am up here all day, and it's raining reasonably well. I've opened up both my beds of leaf mould to get some moisture in. I think in previous years it hasn't rotted down as much as it could because it's dried out. So I'm trying to improve that with that. And this is the stuff that is sort of compost ready, that's going, or some of it's going on that strawberry bed. well, 3 good wheelbarrow loads did it. That's probably the best allotment compost I've ever produced. And apart from just lifting the plants out, no digging involved, top dressed with a good couple of inches of beautiful black allotment compost. Good to go for whatever I do with it from here on in. So 8 Sarpo Axona seed potatoes in as part of the ongoing improvement in my abilities. That is to make sure that no bed is ever empty, that as a crop is taken out, the soil is rejuvenated and another crop goes back in. Perfect. And I've still got some seed potatoes left, so guess what's going in there? First beetroot of the year. Perfect. Well, that was a nice little harvest there. A few more beetroot. And that's going down with us tomorrow to see my mum and dad. Mum likes to make chutney, so that'll help. Well, as if this heavy rain isn't enough, tomorrow we've got storm force winds. So I've put my belt and braces rope over the plastic roof. We're away tomorrow, so I'm going to hope for the best. Okay, the drought is over. Back to Sunday. Well, here's the most obvious and immediate victims of the high winds we had yesterday. Obviously these canes just weren't up to it. I'm going to get 2 more stronger canes and hopefully lift these 2 tomato plants and hope that the stalks are still intact. But while I'm here, I have to say that all this heavy rain will do the leeks good and really thicken them up, soften the ground to enable them to expand. So a good crop of leeks hopefully this year. No sign of rust on them yet either, which is unusual, but I'm sure with all this wet, cold weather that will change. But right now they're looking good. Well, I've said before, almost every time I come up here I have to tie in the cucumbers, which is good. It means they're growing at pace. But not only are they growing, I have cucumbers. That one is definitely ready to harvest. And with 15 or 16 individual cucumber plants, I think the problem will always be, what the hell do we do with them? I asked Cheryl yesterday, what we're going to do with them all. She said, we'll juice them. Never thought of that. It's a good idea. In fact, I can see another tomato plant has bent to the wind's will. More work to do, but I'm going back in the shed. The kettle will be boiling on the fire. I'm going to have my first brew of the day. Well, this rather attractive arch was straight up. They are the canes for next year's fruit, and as the winds have buffeted my site, those canes have drooped lower and lower. So, and they're very easy to snap off at the base, I have found. So I think a little bit more work on supporting those canes is needed. And on the pumpkin front, after my initial setback with the rats nibbling at them, I do now have some that so far, and I'm touching wood as I say it, are nibble free, and that's almost a full-size pumpkin there. Arch is looking good. I'm constantly tying in the rose canes as they grow, and trying to tie them in horizontally along each side of the metal arch, so that perhaps not this year but certainly next year I'll get a lot more flowers the full length of the arch as I walk through, which will be an absolute picture. Well, one side of the P frame has now been cleared as they'd gone over, and I'm hoping again this rain we'll see some more pods fatten up on this one. Haven't picked off this frame yet, but I think I might take a picking today. We watch Gardener's World at some point every weekend. I don't think it's on this week because of the tennis or the proms or whatever. And there are all sorts of other programs, and I read the Allotment press, Kitchen Garden magazine, etc. And anything to do with gardens and allotments now, fashion plays an enormous part in gardening. Never really understood that, but it does. So, for example, when I was growing up in the 70s, it was all about rockeries. And rockeries have gone out of fashion now, and you don't see them being made very often. But, fashion plays a role. And the fashion now, it's almost a religion, is gardening for wildlife. Well, something I've noticed in my life is I tend to rail against the norm. I don't know why. When the whole of society is going that way, I find myself, I don't know why it is. And I'm not a fan of gardening for wildlife. Wildlife can go somewhere else. On this allotment, I've got whitefly, blackfly, the inevitable slugs and snails, the pea moth caterpillar, asparagus beetle, and the latest one we found when Cheryl was up, I think it was Thursday, picking blackcurrants. All of the strawberries have now pretty much finished, and certainly this cold, damp weather has finished them. But when we came up in the week, hoping to take my last picking of strawberries, they had all been eaten by wasps. Never had that on the 7 or 8 years I've been on this plot, but I've got wasps on the plot now, so there's obviously a nest around here somewhere. I've just had a wasp in the shed. He is no more. Yeah, I am not a fan. I don't want wildlife in my garden. And the other thing I've noticed, they say, oh, if you encourage wildlife in, it brings in the predators, and the predators will take care of the pests. That's like saying eggshells stops slugs. They're all myths. I had blackfly on my broad beans, thousands of them, and the spring sown broad beans barely didn't crop because they were decimated by blackfly, and all over the broad beans were ladybirds. Now, the perceived wisdom would tell you the ladybirds will eat the blackfly and everything will be in equilibrium and balance. That's nonsense. There were so many blackfly. The ladybirds, they probably got indigestion eating them, but they couldn't deal with that infestation. And I think that's the problem. You don't get a small problem of whitefly, because I've got netting over my brassicas, the Brussels sprouts. It's bird netting, so the whitefly are completely all over the Brussels sprouts. Nothing can deal with that infestation, except maybe rain. But yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I wish the wildlife would go somewhere wild. I'm sure you'll have your own thoughts, and I know I'm not in keeping with current wisdom. You could argue I'm not in keeping with wisdom, full stop. But yeah, my observation is that that is a myth, that the natural predators will take care of the pests. That is not the case in my experience. So I'm now on the lookout for a wasp's nest. And when I find it, I will not be encouraging it. I will not be grateful for it. It'll be history. Well, despite the weather's best efforts, I've managed to repair the damage that has been done in the last 24 hours to my plot. And, I'm very pleased with it. It's a contrast between now and the winter, when all the beds are bare. The plot looks very brown. But of course now in July, it's at its peak. And there's verdant growth everywhere. And the crops, we're switching on another freezer this weekend to take more of the harvest, which is wonderful. And there's so many things that we haven't cropped yet. It's a fantastic time. But not all plots look like this. Of course, this is my neighbour's plot. Not really used. Even the very expensive and well-built polytunnel isn't really being used this year. And I'm not being judgmental, I'm just pointing out the blindingly obvious. This plot hasn't been used, not a single plant grown on it, not a crop for 4 years. So 3 summers this plot has been paid for and not worked. This plot here, which is adjacent to the 2 I've just shown you, this hasn't been used in 2 years. So actually my plots are surrounded by other plots that have not been worked in years. And I see this as a common thread right the way across YouTube, people on plots all over the country, or sites all over the country, where some plots are worked and utilised to their full, and others are paid for, as these are, every year, and then completely ignored. It is strange. I mean, again, I don't want to be judgmental, I'm just pointing out that this is a common problem. And this site, like all the others, has a waiting list of people who want to come here and grow fruits and vegetables. What a shame. A little humour goes a long way, and some of these quite interesting facts are quite odd. Wrong one. Palmerston Atoll in the South Pacific has a population of 60 people, all of who speak with a Gloucestershire accent. The best poker face is a smile. Blind people smile even though they have never seen anyone else doing so. When Walmart opened in Germany, it scrapped its policy of employees smiling at customers because the Germans found it too weird. That kind of permanent happiness is quite it's quite tiring, isn't it? Oxygen levels in a human womb are similar to those at the top of Mount Everest. The cornea is the only part of the human body with no blood supply. It gets its oxygen from the air. The ancient Greeks believed the uterus wandered around inside the body. Examining the pelvis is the only way to tell the sex of a human skeleton. Parachute tester Rickster Powell, I'm guessing he's American, has made 20,000 parachute jumps and tested 50 new parachutes, only 9 of which went into production. Wow, and he's still alive. A Dutch designer has invented a chair that gives an electric shock to people who say yes, but in meetings. What a good idea. Yes, quite interesting. Well, you know, every year you have successes and failures, and you try different things, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. A little bit like the celery, which is not a great success so far. However, I am going to declare officially this seed multi-sown onion experiment a complete success. They're blimmin' good looking. No, not a single one has bolted. They all look very, very healthy, and in this short, small space, which is 2 meters by 1.5, I have over 60 red onions. Not a single one of them has bolted, and I find red onions bolt very readily when they're planted in from sets. And you can see, you know, if I put my hand there, that, you know, they're a good size onion. They're not too big. I had a complaint last year from the long-haired Sergeant Major that they were too big. And these here, 3 of them, multi-sown, could not look better. So I don't think they're quite ready to harvest yet. They're not beginning to flop. But yeah, really pleased with that. And that's how I'll be doing it in the future, from seed. There are wasps everywhere. I've definitely got a nest around here. I've got to find it and eradicate it. There are quite a lot in the shed, so I'm guessing it's around the back of the shed somewhere. Almost certainly on my plot. Anyway, something to sort out in the future. But you just saw me harvest a crop of Eden Rose garlic, which was planted this spring. And this one is called Topodrome, and that's one of the Eden Rose. It's quite a difference in their size, but I'm equally happy. A good crop. We've got a really good harvest of garlic this year. The garlic from last year saw us right through to now, when we're now using the new stuff. So we're now self-sufficient in garlic, and I see that being no different this year and into next. So very pleased with that. Right, let's go on a wasp hunt. Well, a modest little crop of kestrel, second early potatoes, but for the 2 of us, perfect for tonight's tea. In fact, that's more than enough. And that's the beauty of the system I've set up now. Staggered planting the seed potatoes, and so as each one comes to the time to harvest, 1 plant at a time. Instead of digging up the whole row and then storing them, leave them in the ground. The slugs don't touch these kestrels, and then harvest them as I need them. Each day I learn a little more. Right, on this bamboo support, instead of having a fruit tree that I cut off at the stalk and train it left and right, with this one, this is a Bramley apple that I got from one of my customers. It's already starting to bend, so I'm going to plant this at one end and then train the main trunk just straight horizontal along the bamboo, and we'll see if that works. Another cracking harvest. Well, it's mid-afternoon. Cheryl is still out there picking black currants, but it's the last picking now. She's saying that they're all a bit soft and the ones she's picking are smaller, so this will be the last pick. But another good harvest. You saw the harvest I've got. Fantastic, so more work when we get home. I have hunted high and low looking for a wasp nest. I think they nest in the ground sometimes, don't they? I cannot find it, and they are all over my soft fruit. Really angry about it, but there you go. You can't change it, can you? But you've got to be careful when you're picking, because they're on the blackberries and the strawberries are gone. Anyway, it is what it is. Hopefully they won't be around next year. Anyway, I should, before I go, say happy 5th birthday to our little granddaughter Lexi, who's now out in Canada. We've seen the photos. I know you had a lovely birthday. So yeah, happy birthday, Lexi. I'll be around next week. The harvests continue. I think it's a week of sunshine and showers. Just need the tomatoes to start cropping now. Really looking forward to getting those in the freezer. Cheryl combines the tomatoes with onions, garlic, courgette, carrots, whizzes it all together and then freezes it in bags, ready to make a sauce, a pasta sauce in the winter, and they're cracking. So yeah, I shall see you next week. Thanks for watching. Thanks to those who subscribed. I've lost quite a few lately. Must have been something I said. So those who've stuck around, well done, thank you, I appreciate it. And all being well, I shall see you next week. Until then, look after yourselves, take care, bye for now.